My name is Vanessa Kinsey, and this is my channel, Adventures in Happiness, where my goal is to inspire and empower you to take radical responsibility for your own life and happiness. And coming back on here is something that actually, dusting off my YouTube channel. I've never gone live here before. I do live videos primarily lately on Instagram and have been in the process of moving things over to here. So, this video today was actually inspired by a post that I made in the Leaving California Facebook page. And it kind of went a little bit crazy and caused kind of a stir over there. And because there were so much static going on about it, I thought, I'm just going to go. The easiest way to address all of these comments is to go on here and do a video to talk about it. So I dusted off my channel, got my lights out, wrote some things up. Just because there's so much to talk about, there's so many things that I could discuss related to that post. The post, because I'm sure lots of you aren't in that Facebook group. The post basically said, "Dear Arizona, I haven't told you lately, but I love you. Like I really, really love you, and I thank my lucky stars every day that we were forced to flee California." And I put that up there based on what is going on in my life right now. It was something that I was inspired last night. My heart was just so full about the things that are going on here in our life now in Arizona, a little over a year and a half later. And I just really meant that from my heart. And, it kind of, if you're in any California pages or um, it just was a good reminder of like, remember where you're at. When you post on California pages, you're going to get torn apart probably a little bit um, because there's Californians there. And so, what I know about moving here and what I've learned is that I am way tougher than I was in June of 2021. And way back then, if I would have read the comments that I saw first thing this morning on that post, I would have definitely deleted it and just like crawled in a cave and not come out. It was, it's just that's how people are on the internet. And being out of California as long as I have been now, it's very easy to forget that. So basically what I wanted to talk about, my general intent when I first decided to do this today, I was going to go through all of the comments on that post and address them. But what I know now, as of this writing, that post has 439 likes or laughs and 167 comments. So it would be way too much for me to go through um, in a video like this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in a series. I'll do a couple different videos like this. But I wanted to start here with really talking about the big question, one of the big questions, which was why were we forced to flee California? And I guess why do I love Arizona so much? So those are the two things that I'm going to focus on here. I do have to say that because of the circumstances of just like how our move came about, I have to be very careful about what I talk about. I have to be very careful about the language that I use. And so you're going to have to just try your best to follow along as I go through this story. I did make notes for this because I'm hoping I can stay on track. There is so many things that I could talk about. This is something that I've wanted to do since we originally first moved here. Like when we moved, I knew that this was one of the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to get on here. I wanted to help people go through this transition because it was so difficult for us. I did not know at the time. I didn't think it was going to be as big of a deal as it was. I've been through a lot of really hard things in my life. We've had a lot of tragedies in our life. It's been a long, hard 6 years since 2016 when my uncle was murdered, and then several family tragedies followed that. So I didn't think moving was going to be all that, hard. Um, but it ended up being one of the most difficult things that we've done. And now, a year and a half into this um, process, or a year and a half after a year and a half of being here, um, things are finally starting to fall into place, which is why I made that post last night. So I'll start at the beginning of why we had to flee California. Um, Going way back to 2017, I knew that there was some legislation in California or there was starting to be some chatter about some legislation in California. Um, well, no, actually, in 2017 is where is when it was implemented that we had to have special permission slips, formal permission slips written by a DOCTOR to allow our children to escape being poisoned and have no more cupcakes. So we did that. Our boys had that. I have been dealing with this for many, many years. This isn't anything new. It wasn't new in 2017, just 2017 in California did away with all the other permission slips that we had there. So there was a personal belief permission slip and a religious permission slip that were no longer valid in 2017. And then we went on to having this other permission slip that was had to be signed by a DOCTOR, which we had. So, but I knew at that time that, we're down to only one, and it was evident that the state of California was coming after our kids. They still are. They're still coming after your kids. Um, Even now, more of you are aware of that now, of what's going on there, and just, in fact, what they're up to. But when this was going on in my life, there were very few people that understood what we were dealing with, and it was a really long and a lonely road there for quite a long time. Then moving on into 2021, um, I things were starting to heat up even more. It was becoming there was a lot of static around these issues, and we had gone through a limbo period of probably 20 well 2018, 2019, 2020, kind of back and forth, whether or not our kids were going to be able to continue to go to school in California, basically. My boys are older. My boys, at the time that this was happening, I had an eighth grader and I had a sophomore. Well, let me back up because it'll make more sense kind of when I tell the story. So what happened is, um, in April of 2021, I found out just by chance. I was getting my hair done. I saw a post and I knew immediately that we were going to have to move. Now, I had been researching for 3 years prior to this. I had been 24/7. I was dealing with trying to stay on top of the legislation. And if you've never watched a California legislative session and you're still in California, or even if you're not and you're interested, I highly recommend that you take a look at watch one of those live sessions, and you can see with your own two eyes the level of corruption that goes on there. It is beyond what you could even imagine. And with my background, I had been a paralegal for 32 years. It was shocking that that was allowed to continue. I mean, that was just, it's unbelievable that that's how our state is run, or how that state is run, I should say. So at that point, I had a son who was in eighth grade, and I had another son who was in 10th grade. I had been homeschooling him. This was now past the pandemic. The shutdown happened in March of 2020, and now we are in April of 2021. At this point, I knew that homeschooling my kids was not going to be an option. Had my children been younger when this happened, I would not have left California at that point. I would have stayed. We would have homeschooled them. That is a whole nother subject. Um, that I can do another live video, or I can do another video about if someone is interested in really the ins and outs of all of that. But starting to homeschool a kid when they're in high school and they're used to be hanging out with their friends, and they're not going to go to meetup groups and socialize with other kids or get any other kind of outside social interaction. I mean, maybe there are kids like that, but my kids aren't like that. My kids did not want to meet anybody. They didn't want to join any sports. They didn't want to do anything actually other than stay in their room and play video games. And I knew that that was not going to fly for their future. Had we stayed in California, my kids would probably each weigh 300 pounds, and they would have never seen the light of day in years now. Because when kids are older, you teenagers, they do what they want, they don't do what you tell them. So they were big enough where I could not force them to do anything that they didn't want to do. So very quickly, that was in April of 2021. Very quickly, I had to figure out what we were going to do. Back in when was that? February of 2021. I was actually scheduled, I had flights. My son and I were going to go to Oklahoma. I have someone that I met online, very involved in this sort of movement. And know a lot of people that were in the same situation as us and were having to leave for the same reasons that we were having to leave. So I knew this girl who had moved to Arizona or to Oklahoma. She was a real estate agent, and I was going to go there. And we were going to spend a few days, and I was going to check it out with really the full intention, because it seemed like at that time that was the most free place that we could go, that we were going to go there and check. My son and I were going to go there and check it out. Well, as luck would have it, that was the same weekend that I was scheduled to go that there was the giant ice storm in that area. It went all through Texas and Oklahoma, and the power was knocked out, and all this stuff was going on. And so we had to cancel our flights. And I was like, I'm not doing that. There's no way I'm going to live in a situation where I'm at the mercy of not having power and having to worry about, or, all these other weather related things. I just really had no interest in that. And I should say, one of the other things that the number one thing that everyone talks about when they were going to leave California, including me, this was the top of my list initially, was the weather. How can we find a place that has the same weather as California? So that's where I started to, and at that point I was still in February of 2021. That was still like kind of high on my list. The weather was still kind of high on my list of trying to figure out a place that we could go, that was, this perfect utopia. Well, in April of 2021, when this, I got hit straight between the eyes with this and knew that the following school year, my boys were not going to be able to go to school, I had to very quickly figure out what in the world that we were going to do. Now, the 3 years that I had been researching where we were going to go, we had never actually went anywhere, which is another thing I would tell you to do. Like, top number one tip is to figure out, number one, you need to know why you're moving, and number two, figure out where your like your top three places, and actually go and visit there. Because when you look at a place online, you look at photos or the research that you do online, when you go to a place, it's very, very different in person. And I'm so glad that I didn't. I know a lot of people do this, and I know that it works out well for them, where they buy a place even in a house, even sight unseen in a place they've never been to, and it works out. I am super like sensitive to my environment and just that sort of thing. And that I couldn't do that. And it's a good thing that I didn't have to do that. So, because Arizona was close enough, we were living in Orange County and had been for many, many years. I will tell you that we lived in our house for, I think, like 23 years. My husband grew up in Huntington Beach. He was, he still is a surfer. So, leaving that area and leaving the ocean was very hard for him. It still is very, very hard for him. Um, but, we had to do this. So, the reason that we moved for our kids. That's it. That was what we were doing. We moved for our kids so they could have a better life, so they could live a normal life, and so they could be free. That's what we did. And we basically gave up everything to pick up and leave. So in April of 2021, I found that out. I waited a couple of weeks till my dog sitter was available and scheduled, made arrangements to come to Arizona. I just decided that's where we're going to go. That's where we're going to have to go. The 3 years that I had been researching different places to go, I had all sorts of states on my list. I had started with Arizona. I had Texas on my list. I had South Carolina. I had North Carolina, and I had Oklahoma. And I feel like there was a few other places like South Dakota and things like that. Um, there was a couple other states that, were also on my radar, and I was trying to research and, figure out the best place for us. So we took a road trip to Arizona at the end of May, and very quickly we were here like, I think we just came for the weekend, and I had it planned out that it was going to be, there was several different areas that I wanted to check out here, and we were going to come, and we were going to go here, and we were going to go there, and we were going to go over here, and it was going to be like um no big deal to check out these different cities that were of interest to me. And instead we came here and I found out that Arizona is a giant state. And it is very different in person than it looks on the map. So I really had to rely on some other people that I knew, who were going through the same sort of thing. And I had one friend in particular that I had met only because we were going through this very same thing at the same time. I had to rely on her, um, too, and her research that she had done on this area, and just hope we were going to end up making the right geographical location within Arizona for us. We came to the city of Goodyear, Arizona, and um, stayed a couple days, like I said, and did the best we could to go and visit these different areas. We went further up north, which Prescott, Arizona, Prescott is how you say it, was top of my list initially, but because I still was working my job remotely in California, and I had to go back periodically, go back there, it made more sense for me to be closer to California, drive to be able to drive back and forth. So, luckily, the area that we chose um, was very close to the 10 freeway, and going back to California is really, it's not that big of a deal to drive back and forth to there. Luckily, when we were here, I met some really nice, amazing people at the hotel that actually lived here, and I'm still friends with them now. And so they gave me the lowdown on the high schools, the different high schools in the area. So when we chose our area, we were really choosing our location based on the school. And so we went around and looked at the schools, and I can remember driving, and just I can remember being here, and just things were so very different than what I was used to. And I remember seeing the school for the first time here, and I will say that the area that I came to, as soon as we drove up to this area that we live, I knew right away that I really wanted to live here. So I wanted to live here, and just luckily the high school, you know, fell in line with what we were looking forward to. So we were here, we made the decision, okay, this is where we are going to be. We live in a place called Verado, which is a master plan community within the city of Buckeye. And there's about 20,000 people here, and it looks very much like when you're here, you would not know that you are in Arizona. So I really feel so thankful to have ended up here, because other than moving somewhere, living somewhere more up north, like at a higher elevation where it's cooler during the summertime, um, this is like, I absolutely love it here. And so we went home that weekend. We went home on a Sunday. We immediately started looking at rentals. We're hearing just things from everyone about how terrible and how hard it was to find a rental. So I finally was able to speak with a lady on that following Monday morning, and I just basically took the first place that I found. I was the first call that I made where she said that she had a rental coming up, and I'm like, I'll take it. I'll take it. So we ended up having to rent the place here a month earlier than I would have, yes, it was a month earlier than I would have wanted. But it ended up working out, because then we were able to go back and forth to California. We made several trips by ourselves, probably at least 4 or 5, where we just would bring stuff over here on the weekends, drive over one day and come back the next day. Um, so that was helpful, and we did have a moving we also ended up obviously, we had to have a moving company to move our house. So we went home, immediately started getting our house ready for sale. We lived in our house, like I said, 23 years. Not ready to sell our house. We were not, I did not think this was going to happen this quickly. I didn't think we were going to have to move this quickly. One of the reasons why we had to like pick up and like close shop and just leave as fast as we did is that the school here in Arizona starts in early August. So we really did not have a very big window of time to get everything done and moved. So I got the rental here, started calling realtors, and started getting my house ready for sale, which included I was right in the middle of stripping my kitchen cabinets of like layers of paint. And I had to finish doing that. I could not sell my house with my kitchen half done like that. So it was a really, like, really, really hard month. It was a very hard and tiring month getting ready to come over here, but we did it. We packed up our house, we put our house on the market, and we left. Our house sold. That was back in 2021, where the market was much different in California than it is now. And we were part of that feeding frenzy that was, at the time, our house was sold for the most that it was a townhouse, like condominium, sold for the most that a house had ever sold for in that development. So we got out at the right time, and I will say that that was also one of my biggest fears, is that we were going to and I remember having that thought the very first thought I had in 2020, when I found out that the state of California was going to be shut down. I was like, I better not lose the equity in my house. Like, I was just like, that was really what I was worried about. I was really concerned about getting trapped there, because we'd owned our house for such a long time. So we picked up and left, and our kids were not happy about it at all. And that was why I made that post last night, because things have really started coming together for us now. It's a year and a half later, a little over a year and a half later. We moved here on June 18th of 2021. It was the hottest day of the year. It was 118 degrees when we moved in. So when some of the comments that people were saying on this Facebook post, like, you don't know, yeah, you haven't been through a summer. I will say the first summer was hard. Um, it's just different here, though. I need to do another post about that. Just that it's different. The air conditioning is different. The houses are built differently here. It's just very different. It's not like being here in 105 is not the same as being in California when it's 105 degrees. It's just, you cannot compare the two. So, that first year was really hard. My son, my youngest, started his freshman year here at the high school, and my older son was a junior when he started here. Because I had homeschooled him in California and because of the laws around the situation in California, once I pulled him from school, he was not ever going to be able to go back to school in person in the California school system ever again. And, those are things that we went over a lot before deciding to pull him. And that was the choice that he ultimately ended up making. So when we moved here, I had said to him, and then knowing what I knew about having him um, be homeschooled for a year, and how just like that was just not the way that a teenager should spend their teen years. Um, he very reluctantly agreed to go back to go to in-person school, and luckily it was no issue at all. There was no big deal for him to go back to school, re-enroll in school here. I will say though that last year, in his junior year, there were they didn't accept any of our homeschool credits. So there were certain ways that he had to make up credits and things to be able to graduate. And it's pretty amazing because, and he was the reason that I made that post last night. It was him. He was the one, my oldest was the one that he's an introvert. He's very quiet. He is not going to go out of his way to talk to anyone or meet people. And when we first moved here, it was really, really hard because we would go to the school football games. My other son was playing football. That was really good for him. And we got him involved in football for that very reason. So he could meet friends and have something to keep him busy. And he was doing that. We'd go to the football games, and my older son would be sitting by himself because he's not going to sit with us. Doesn't matter who's going to sit with their parents at a football game. He'd sit by himself, and then over this other section was all the kids there together, all these high schoolers just enjoying their high school, and he was there by himself. And I would just sit there, and it would kill me. It would actually absolutely kill me. And then around that same time, in California, all of his friends there were going to homecoming and doing these really fun high school things. And it really looked like he was just being punished for something that it really didn't seem fair that this was happening to him. So the first year for both of our kids, my other son um, was just constantly telling me that he was going to hitchhike back to California, that as soon as he graduated, he was going to go back to California. He didn't care if he had to live under a bridge. He didn't care if he had to walk there, but he wasn't staying here. He really hated it here. And he was really, really difficult. We had a lot of trouble with him the first year here. It was grueling. I'm like, oh my God. But I knew that this was the right decision for them, and I knew that we didn't have any other choice. At this point, I had ruled out all of the other states that were on my list for various reasons, mostly rather weather related, honestly. I just and distance too. It was just too far. Um, I knew that having this move to somewhere that is so similar in so many things to California. There's so many similarities in the way that it looks and in the way that the weather is a lot of the time, that I just knew that if we had this hard of a transition going such a short distance, that us moving to anywhere more quote unquote foreign, where things were even more different, would be way too hard. So I knew we were staying in Arizona, but our kids weren't happy about it. The reason I made that post last night was because my son, who's now a senior, my oldest, my heart was exploding about what is going on in his life here, and the people that he has met and the friends that he has and the life that he is living. He just joined the tennis team at the urging of all of his friends, and which is something I wanted him to do when we first moved, purely for the reason that I wanted him to be able to, you know, make friends. It's a great way to make friends and get to know people, but he wouldn't do it. And he joined the tennis team, and today was their second game, and just completely overwhelmed. The comments on their page, his friends that were commenting, he has come so far. He actually was accepted into the honors program at NAU and will be going there in the fall. And that is just another thing that he would have not been able to do had we stayed in California. So, the reason, and my husband and I, throughout this period of time, of this transition of the last year and a half of us moving here, it's like I said, it's been hard. It's hard. It's been harder. It's been more difficult than I ever would have imagined. I had no idea that would you lose so much when you leave. Like, I really understood that, like that Cheers song, what they used to say on that old show Cheers, like, "Go somewhere where everybody knows your name," because it's just very strange when you live in an environment for so long, and you have your familiar places and your auto mechanic and your grocery store and your routines and your friends and your people who know you and recognize you. When you go to a place that's not like that, you really lose so much of yourself. And for my husband, who had to leave the ocean, that was such a huge part of his personality. So, um, I just want, to kind of normalize the fact of how hard it is to move. I see so often, people put posts up on these different leaving California types of groups that I'm on Facebook, and they will be very, like, this was the best thing that ever happened to us. And, we left and didn't look back. And, it's taken us a long, long time to get to this point. And just this afternoon, I asked my son, he actually had like a little fan club there at the tennis match today. So they had signs for him and everything. And it's just so overwhelming for me, because it's just true confirmation that I made the right choice for them. The people here in Arizona, um, are going to why I love Arizona so much. And it really truly is the number one thing, and the number one thing I saw when I came over here, it was the people. The very first time we visited, I was just blown away at how nice and normal the people are. And to me, it really feels like California in the 80s. That's what it's always felt like when we're here. It's just free and happy, and everybody gets along, and it's clean. At least where I live, I saw some comments on this post that I'm referring to, people complaining about different areas. Where I live, I have only seen one homeless person, and that was just within the last month or so. And it's clean. There's not like trash. Uh, the restrooms are clean when you go in places. People are so friendly and so helpful. I could do a whole nother video on all the different things and how tripped out my husband and I were initially the first couple of months. It took a long time to get used to people just interacting with you on a normal, like, in a normal way. One of the things that I remember was going into Lowe's when we were here, and I when I was in California, and I had been making a lot of trips to Home Depot when we were in California to get our house ready. When we were in California, I'd go to Home Depot and I'd go up to help somebody or to ask somebody for help, and I'd be like, "Hi, sorry to bother you. Can you please," and here we'd ask for something and the guy would start telling us that we asked one question and the guy just started telling us. We ended up talking to him for like 15 minutes, and it was just we'd go out, we'd leave and just be like, "Is this even like real life? This is so trippy." And so there's so many of those things. People that are still in California, there are so many things that you don't realize the way that California is, especially if you're in a more populated area. Now, I'm originally from a very small town up in Northern California in the Eastern Sierras, and people are nice there. But where we are from in the hustle and bustle and the fast moving, it was just very, very different. And especially um, things especially got really, dicey once the shutdown happened, and then people started really trying to police other people. So I wanted to talk about. I'm just going to close with the few reasons, just a few things why I love Arizona. Like I said, I love the people. I love the fact that I've never seen a spider here. I have not seen one spider. In my house in California, I probably killed 5 spiders a day. I don't like spiders. I didn't kill spiders. I relocated them outside. I just don't I really don't like spiders. I've only seen one scorpion, and that was not anywhere near my house. It was actually in a very populated, odd area. And so and I actually really love the weather here. And at the moment it's been cold, and I've learned, and most people that I see here that I know here, um, we just prefer the heat. You just get used to it and you prefer the heat. The last couple of weeks, or there's been a few days in the last couple of weeks that I've been able to open our windows here, and that's been really nice because that's probably one of the things that was hardest for me to get used to was having to be inside with my windows closed. Uh, because in California, we had an ocean breeze and my windows were open like pretty much year round. So, another thing is I've only seen, believe this, I've probably only seen 5 at the very most since we've been here over a year and a half, 5 discarded MASKS. When I'm in California, I see those things everywhere. They are littered everywhere. I just have no I don't see that here. There are people that still wear them sometimes in my area. It's just not just the people that I interact with and things like that, that's just not something that's ever the entire time we've been here, it's never been an issue. People are just they're just different. They're so different here than California. So, I guess that's it. I hope that that gave you a little bit of insight onto why I love Arizona, why I chose Arizona. I know Arizona is not for everybody, thank God. That's fine. It doesn't have to be. I'm not out to convince anyone. I just really want to let people know, especially if you're considering moving from California, that it really can ultimately end up being the very best thing that happens to you and to your family, for your family. The kids here are so different. There is no pretension. No one cares about what kind of car you drive or what kind of shoes you're wearing or what kind of bag you have or any of those things, how many Instagram followers you have, or if you're an influencer. It just doesn't matter. People are real. People are nice, people are friendly, and people care about each other. And that's the kind of environment that I want to be in. I know there was a lot of other questions talking about the political climate here in Arizona. That was one of the things that came up, and that's one of the things that I actually would really love to address. I'm just not going to do it right now. I'm not going to do it here tonight. So, if you would like to have more content like this or learn more, hear more stories about my journey out of California, my experiences here in Arizona, please subscribe to my channel. And I would really appreciate it if you got any value out of this, if you could please share, like, and share what you've seen here today. With that, I will close with if you have any comments, if you have any specific questions, please let me know and I will do my best to answer them in one of my upcoming live videos. Thank you so much. I love you. Bye.